Hello, welcome back to another video. In this one I'm going to show the entire process of making a product for my shop from idea to finished product. So the product I'll be making will be a print for my shop. I'll show you what it looks like. It looks like this. I make a lovely little print for my shop, and this video is sponsored by Canon. They've sponsored me quite a few times in the past, and I love using their printer, and I genuinely use their products all the time, so I'm always more than happy to do a Canon sponsorship. To make these prints I'll be using the they sent me a big box with paper and ink, which was always very exciting. There's probably very few people who can get genuinely very excited about paper, and I'm one of them. So they sent me a big box with the premium fine art rough paper. They sent me A4 and A3, so I'll be testing out a few different size options. But the main focus of this video is how do I make a product. So first off, you got to put a bit of thinking into it, a bit of planning, because you got to think like, what does my audience want? So before I even started this piece, I obviously knew in my mind, right, I'm going to make a print, I need to make a piece of art to turn into a print. First off, I have to think about what's already popular in my shop. My most popular prints, I would say, are my seaside based / kind of ocean themed prints. I go on holiday to the seaside quite a lot, and well, I don't go a lot, but whenever I do go on holiday it usually is to the seaside, so I'm often making art inspired by the places I go to. So I've made many seaside pieces of art, and they're always the best sellers on my shop, so much so whenever I do a shop update now I try to get at least 2 kind of beach themed, seaside themed prints in there to add to my ever-growing collection of sea-based pieces of art. Knowing that, I know, right, let's make another kind of beachy, seaside themed piece of art, but also it needs to be different. I can't just keep making beach after beach after beach. I already have 2 beach prints, I think. With another one kind of on the way. I've made another piece of art in the last video which I'll probably turn into a print, which is also a beach. So it's like, right, I can't keep doing beaches. What can I do that's kind of seaside themed that isn't just like sand? So I was thinking, let's do something seagull based. Well, I have a lot of birds in my art. They're usually small little details like in the background, they're just finishing touches, but I wanted to do a piece that really like made the birds the focal point, because I've only done that a few times, and one of them, well, you can't really see it, is this owl piece, and that's obviously winter themed, so I thought it's kind of like be inspired by the owl piece but make it summery, make it beachy, because people really like the owl print. So I'm going in with the knowledge of people like the owl print, people like beaches, let's merge the two together. So with like running my Etsy shop and kind of figuring out what people like, you kind of have to tailor your art towards your specific audience, which for me is good because I like to make the art that people also like to buy, but there are pieces of art which I make, which I love, but I just don't put up on my shop because I know they won't be popular. There's loads of pieces of art which some of my favourites, like for instance this bear piece, I think it's lovely. One of my favourite things I've ever made, but I don't think this would sell very well as a print because it's too niche. Like a cutesy bear in the winter is a lot more niche than a seaside. Now, seaside is a very broad topic, so you'd think, oh, there must be so many seaside prints out there. What makes yours stand out? Well, what makes mine stand out is the style. So I have like the broad topic of people are into seaside prints, but then I have it pop it through the filter of my quite like unique art style. The nicheness of collage with the broadness of beach. That's the thought process behind it. Because I used to have a lot of just like painted, I used to do a lot of painting, like painted illustrations on my shop, but I've decided over like these past few months that I really want to niche down into purely like collage based art on my shop. Alright, so with a really loose concept in mind, that concept being seagull, I started trying to make a piece of art, and I had a really tough time making art. Well, I've had a really tough time making art these past like 5 days. Been a little bit of a roller coaster. I felt a little bit in art block. I was on the edge of art block. Perhaps I was in art block, I don't know. But yeah, I was really struggling with art at the start of this week. I spent an entire day trying to make a piece of art. I'll pop some footage of it now. I painted loads of paper, and I started making this bird. I was trying to do, well, what I now know are kind of juvenile seagulls. There's like your classic seagull, the white ones that everyone recognises, but then before they enter that phase, they are kind of these spotty brown seagulls. Like, this is just what they look like when they're kids. I didn't realise that, and I just thought this was maybe like a different breed of seagull. So my whole concept was I was going to have a brown kind of spotted seagull on a rocky cliff with its eggs, like a bird's nest. After spending an entire day making a bird, which I didn't really like, I realised that the seagull I was collaging was actually like a juvenile seagull, and it wouldn't have eggs. So the whole concept didn't work anymore. That, plus I didn't really like the way it was looking. It was just very boring, and it wasn't exciting me in the slightest. So I kind of wasted a day there. I woke up the next day determined to make a nice piece of art, and I thought I would actually plan it out this time, because the last one I didn't really plan. I kind of just went in hoping it would work with a few reference images, and yeah, obviously it didn't work. So this time I was like, right, let's actually plan it out, which helped. Who'd have thought that planning would help? I did a lovely sketch. Well, I did quite a few thumbnails and then a final sketch, which I loved, inspired by this mood board I'd made. I kind of combined maybe like 5 different images together to make this one, and then I took it into Photoshop, added a little bit of background colour just really loosely, and that was my reference that I was like basing this whole collage from. So it ended up turning out quite nice, this sketch, and it was good to have a piece of art go well after the past day of failures. Anyway, that's fine. Obviously, you're gonna have days where art doesn't work out. That's just what you're in for when you're an artist. It's what you're signing up for. Anyway, I started to paint more textures for my new collage idea. I'll pop more footage of that up as well. Painting away loads of blue textures, trying to get loads of splatters for like the ocean, the waves in the ocean. Spent ages making like all these textures, trying to be really specific with what I was making. By the end of it, I had about 20 sheets. Oh, I don't know, 10 to 20 sheets, not quite sure how many. And I started to try and make this collage traditionally, and it just wasn't working. I spent maybe like an hour, 2 hours just shuffling paper around, cutting out pieces, and my vision in my head was just, there was no way I could create that vision traditionally with this paper in front of me. And to try and create like the misty, foggy textures of a wave crashing in the ocean, I was like, I'm gonna have to use Photoshop for this. So realizing I needed to do it on Photoshop, and then the following day I actually started making what would be the finished piece. So we're 3 days in now, and I've only just started making the finished piece. I will hand you over to Pastor me talking about some stuff, and I will probably do a voiceover as well, talking more about the process, and then after that I'll come back. Welcome to the chaos of my desk. Trying to make this piece of art has been a struggle. So I don't know what you've just seen before this, but I was painting loads of textures and I was trying to make it traditionally, and I was really struggling with trying to piece it together traditionally, because what I want is like such specific textures in such specific spots, and when those textures are unreliable, like a splatter, you can't control where a splatter goes really. It makes it very difficult to try and piece it together and get the exact right textures. I've decided to make this piece digitally. Oh, that is a failed collage that I was trying to do before this collage. There's just so much paper all over my desk. I've got 2 pieces here, I really love these collages, so I'm just keep looking at these to remind myself that I can do collage, because there are times where it just feels impossible to try and get good art made. Anyway, so let me show you what I've been working on. I've started off by collaging what will be a bird. It obviously isn't finished. It's missing a body, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to collage all the birds traditionally. Then I'm going to make, well, I've already started, I'm making the environment on Photoshop. So what I've done is I've scanned in all my textures. Loads of textures are all scanned in, and I'm just basically doing what I would do traditionally, but I'm doing it on a laptop. This gives me a lot more freedom and a lot more control with how I can change the colours of things, resize things, and make them perfect to fit the space. So this is the sketch. Let me just move the sky out of the way. This is the colour mock which I did. So I'm trying to basically copy that exactly with all my collage textures. It still looks a little bit flat and it's missing that kind of finishing touch of, like, I'm going to add in more splatters and just add in a bit more just finishing touches, but basically that will come in at the end. It's looking a little bit boring at the moment, but that's because the main focal point of the piece, which is the birds, are obviously missing. So I've just been placing my bird against this and thinking, you know what, I reckon that will look quite good once it's done. So I'm going to finish collaging this, and then I have the one that I'm currently working on. I'm going to make these two today, and then all the other birds will probably be painted. I'll just paint them and then they'll be edited on top. I'll do that all on separate pieces of paper and then bring it all together into Photoshop. That way it gives me the freedom to take my birds, place them anywhere I want, to resize them, to recolor them. It just gives me so much more freedom. So that's the Hello, okay, I'm going to do a voiceover for a little bit whilst I show this art footage. So yeah, I was making all the birds traditionally. The reason I didn't do these digitally is because there's so many fiddly little bits on a bird. It would probably be 10 times longer, take 10 times longer to try and do this on Photoshop. So saved myself the time and did this traditionally. I did the start of this bird all on a live stream. The wings that you saw me flapping around before were all done on a live stream for Patreon. They took quite a while. Meant to spend maybe like a 2-hour-long live stream, and all I managed to get done was 2 wings, but they were very intricate wings. I carried on the next day with finishing off the bird, added on a quick little body, and I decided not to add the legs onto the birds because I thought to myself, oh, I can add the legs on and like the eye on in Photoshop. But then when it came to Photoshop, I was like playing around with adding on the little details of the birds, and I really didn't like the way it looked, so I decided to leave the legs off of them, and I think it looks quite interesting. They're more kind of abstract birds, and you know, they're not trying to be realistic. So after I'd collaged my 3 birds, I did one really detailed one, another one which was slightly smaller and slightly less detailed, and then a much smaller one which had barely any detail at all. It was more just like a silhouette of a bird. After I had them done, I moved on to painting all the smaller birds in the piece. So these were all going to be done in watercolour, just very loosely painted, and I was going to edit them on top in different ways, basically just like more like silhouettes of the birds. If I did all the birds collaged with a little bit of detail, it would just be too much when I want the main focal point of the piece, the focal point of the piece to be that bigger bird. If I then start adding in loads more really detailed birds, it's just going to be way too crowded and you're going to lose that focal point. So I still wanted the piece to be to look like really overcrowded with all these birds, because like in the reference pictures I was looking at, there was so many birds, so I wanted to kind of mimic that, but in a way which was not gonna like distract from the main focal point. So I thought I'd just do like outlines of birds and silhouettes of birds. Okay, hello, I'm going to show you the Photoshop file for this piece. I've also put my face in the corner just so there's a little bit more to look at, because I know it can get a bit boring just looking at a Photoshop file. So I'm going to quickly show you how I've pieced all of this together. These are all separate pieces which I painstakingly jigsawed together to create an interesting looking collage. All of these textures are taken directly from my own scans of all the textures you just saw me painting. So I scanned everything in. A lot of it is already kind of cut up because, like I did mention, I tried to collage this traditionally and quickly realised this isn't gonna work. All the birds that I painted as well. And also like little things like this, like ripping a piece of paper, taking a picture of it and then editing that rip into the actual collage. I very rarely collage digitally, or like whenever I do it, it's always just to add little finishing touches at the end. So you'll bring the scan into the Photoshop file, find a nice bit of the texture, and then it's making it the perfect colours. So spend ages on these sliders, making sure it's, you know, exactly the colour that you need it to be. The reason I decided to do this on Photoshop and not traditionally is because I really wanted this kind of, well, I wanted it to look like this, and for me to get this look traditionally would have been very, very difficult, because there's just things you can do on Photoshop which you can't do in real life. One of them being like these smooth transitions between the rocks. Like I wanted this to be smooth transition to kind of imply like the fogginess at the bottom of the rocks as like the water's hitting it. I didn't want there to be a harsh line between the rocks. So on Photoshop you can do you know, obviously like rub it out so you kind of get a softer transition. Anyway, so that's the C. Took ages to do that. Oh, and also you might notice there's tiny little shadows, because when you're collaging traditionally, obviously you get shadows, and that's one of like something I really love about collage, all the natural bits of shadows that you get. Obviously on Photoshop you're not going to get those shadows. You see they're toggling that on and off, can you notice it? Not on all the pieces, it'd be a bit overkill if I did it on all of them, but just on a few. I mean, if you was to do it in real life it would look a lot better, but no one's really looking that close up to your shadows, but I just thought it added an extra little bit of realness to this obviously not traditional collage. So that's the ocean, and then I also have the sky here, which took a while to make, even though it is just a few pieces, like making sure it's the exact right colour, adding in these rips, like this rip up here, while it may look like it's part of this piece of paper, it's its own separate piece, and it's all kind of edited in to look like it's one piece. So it's quite fiddly stuff. And then the finishing touches of the birds, so adding in the big birds, they look really nice. They like worked quite well with the colour palette, so I was pleased with that. And then all the small birds took ages, absolutely ages, just hours spent trying to get the best composition, just moving them around so much. Even now I think, could it be better? I'm not so certain on this bird. I'm not sure, do I like it, do I not? I don't know. I think I just need to stop messing about with it now, because I'm on my 4th day of looking at this image. I need to move on with my life. So the finishing touch now to make this print ready is to literally just add on my little signature at the bottom, which is super easy to do, and then it will be ready to turn into a print. Okay, now that I have my art made, it's time for it to be printed. Seeing as this piece was all done on Photoshop, I didn't have to edit anymore, because usually like 99% of my art is done traditionally. So when I finish a piece of art, I have to I take photos of it using my camera I'm using there, which is my Canon EOS or EO5. I can't tell what, I'll pop it up on screen. This is the camera I use. I take pictures of the art, I take that into Photoshop, I edit the pictures, and then that will turn into the print. But with this, seeing as it's already on Photoshop, I don't need to do any more editing, add my little signature at the bottom, and it's ready to go. Right, so it's time to get printing. The printer I have is the Canon PIXMA Pro-200. I've had it for a year now. I got sent it yeah, around about like this time last year, and I really was grateful for that, because I wanted to get a printer anyway. So when Canon reached out saying, hey, do you want a printer? I was like, couldn't believe my luck. So I've been using that printer ever since, absolutely love it. Don't have like a single bad thing to say about it. It's genuinely been such an amazing like thing for my shop that now I can just print my own prints whenever I want. If you want to know more about the printer, I will link in the description a video where I go over all my first impressions when I first got it. I'll also link another video where I go into a lot more detail about how I make prints in terms of taking a traditional piece of art and turning it into a digital file, so they might be helpful. Anyway, the paper I'm using is this, the Premium Fine Art Rough paper. This is very nice paper. For all my prints up until now, I've been using this paper. I'll pop it on my screen. It's the Photo Paper Pro Premium Matte Paper. This is still really good paper. I use it for all my prints. I've been using it for like a year now, and I love it. I continuously go back to buy more. Not had a single issue with it, love it. But this paper is like a whole new level. It's 320 GSM. My other paper which I use I think is 210, so this is a lot thicker, and it basically just looks exactly like watercolour paper. Like I was shocked when I took it out, like just how textured it was. It genuinely looks like a piece of watercolour paper. It just looks so nice. It's very good quality paper. I will hand you over to a voiceover for the rest of this video now. I'll show you the printing process as well as the finished results, and then I'll go a little bit into the Etsy listing and how I actually get the product up on my website so people can buy it. So actually, I should probably mention at this point, this print is now on my Etsy shop. You can buy it, it's available to buy. I will leave a link in the description to my Etsy shop. Alright, so here are the finished prints. You just saw a few clips there of me doing some printing. These are printed on the A4 paper, and then I also printed an A3 version, which you'll see in a little bit. To do all my printing, I use a printing software called Professional Print and Layout. It's a free software you can download, and it's compatible with Canon printers, so that's what I use. It makes it super easy to print, and this printed really easily. Sometimes with a print, and it just depends on the piece of art, I have to do a few just to like tweak the file a little bit to make sure the colours come out exactly how I want them to. But this one just came out perfect straight away. Super happy with the colours. And yeah, just love the way it turned out, and it looks really good on this paper. I imagine like if you did watercolour painting and then printed that onto this paper, it would look so much like the real thing. Like you probably won't be able to tell the difference, because it does look really good. I also did print an illustration I did a while ago, and it's so nice to see this illustration like physically, because this was a piece that I kind of similar to the one I was doing in this video. I painted the girl separately, the crocodile I collaged separately, and then I made the background on Photoshop and brought it all together. So I've never actually seen a physical copy of this piece of art before, so that was really nice, and I framed it. And I think that looks so nice. This is an example of a piece of art which I love, but I probably would never sell as a print because it might not be very popular on my shop. Anyway, speaking of my shop, it's time to get this product up as a listing. So I put together some product photography. For these, I just do a simple plain background picture so you can just so the print can really shine on the product listing. And then I also have a picture of me holding it in front of some flowers. This is edited. This picture I reuse a lot, and I'll just edit the print on top. Saves me having to take a bunch of pictures of flowers all the time. So those are the product pictures, quite easy to put together. And then it's just putting up the product listing, filling out the Etsy form, you know, doing the description, doing the title, all that business, and then just getting it up on the shop. From idea to finished product in a shop which people can buy. This whole process took around 6 days. It took me about 4-5 days to make the art because it was just a really slow process. I was really struggling with this piece of art, and then it was super easy to make the print and pretty quick to get it up on Etsy as well. So there you go. I hope you've enjoyed this video and seeing this piece of art come to life. Hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks again to Canon for sponsoring this video, and I will link all the relevant links in the description. This paper I couldn't recommend enough. Love it so much. It's super high quality, feels nice, looks good. I mean, what more could you ask for in a paper? If you're after some really good printed paper that has that watercolour texture to it, this is the one I would recommend. With all that being said, I hope you've enjoyed, and I'll see you very soon. Bye.